Check 1, 2. You know, if your picture wasn't in there, it doesn't mean I think any less of you, because you all are treasured people to me. Oh, I'm a survivor, so like the song says. Let's open with a word of prayer, if we could bow our heads. Lord, help me put aside everything I know about you, everything I know about myself, about others, and everything I know about my own recovery, for a new experience in you, Lord, a new experience in myself and my fellows, and a much-needed new experience in my own recovery. Amen. I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. Today I choose recovery, and my name is John. My sobriety date is March 27th of 2021. I'm from the town of Framingham, Massachusetts, which is less than 20 miles west of Boston. Good upbringing. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Looking back, also a strong enabler. As a small child, I was drawn to Jesus from the very beginning. There was a television show. On Saturday mornings, I watched cartoons, and there wasn't a lot of kids in the neighborhood, so I was by myself a lot. And on Sunday morning, before the cartoons came on, was a show called Davy and Goliath. And that's what started drawing me to Jesus, was that show. It continued with different movies that I would see on television about Jesus and the Bible. I had my first communion in the Catholic Church. At that time, I was in second grade, and I remember the best part about it was I got to dress like a priest. I also had my confirmation in that same church, St. Bridget's Church in Framingham, Massachusetts. I have an older sister, Kathy, and a younger brother, Richard, who you saw up there on the screen. My father was never home much. He worked a lot. But as a small child, we had breakfast together as a family every morning, and when I got older, we always had dinner together. In school, I basically got along with most people. In the neighborhood, we played sports outside every day after school and all weekend. Basketball and street hockey, tag football, and when the ponds froze, ice hockey from the time the sun went up to the time the sun went down. Around the age of 12, I started drinking with the kids in the neighborhood. My dad was the one with the bars, so we would take empty bottles and fill them with the strongest proof alcohol we could find, and then take a can of grape juice and sit in the woods and slug the alcohol and chase it with high C grape juice. Ugh. Okay, so that was that. No, we'd sleep out, we'd roam the neighborhood and cause trouble. Liquor went to weed and acid in the early 70s. I graduated from high school in 1975. I continued to party with my friends, yet with no bad consequences. Now, in January of 1977, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He died 6 months later. It was during this time that I tried cocaine for the first time. In the steps, we learn about character defects. The big book says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problem. So being the selfish person that I was, I left my newly widowed mom and my younger brother and moved to Los Angeles in January of 1978. I had just turned 21. Disco was everywhere. It was at its peak right then, as a matter of fact. In Los Angeles, cocaine was everywhere. The problem was when it was passed around at parties and clubs, etc., everybody would do a couple of lines, and when it got to me, I did mine, yours, and everybody else's. I did as much as I could get my hands on. I made a lot of money. I had 2 cars, and I lived on the beach. Well, it took a couple of years, but I gave that job away, the apartment away, the cars away, because it really didn't faze me. It was just like I was programmed to just keep on going on. My mother would always come to the rescue, as she did that time too. She would come to the rescue until she died. Because there's a song, for those of you that are over 45 in the crowd, called Cinnamon Girl by Neil Young. One of the lines in the song says, "Mom, send me money now. I need some money. Somehow I'm going to make it. You see, I need another chance because your baby loves to dance." That was like my mantra, because Mom was always there. She flew me back to Boston, bought me a new car, and I started managing a clothing store. Up to this point, I was working during the day and DJing in nightclubs at night. I had started disc jockeying at that point. A gram of coke would generally last me the night, and then my nose stopped working. You think with a nose of this size, it would have lasted a little bit longer. Then somebody showed me how to smoke it. Somebody showed me how to change it into what was called then freebase. And then I stole from the clothing store, gave my job away, the car, my girlfriend, and my apartment. What now? Run. My friend Sean likes to say he's a runner. And I didn't realize it until I wrote this testimony out, the way that I must have been too. In 1991, my friend drove all the way up from Lee County, Florida, a guy I grew up with in Massachusetts, and to Boston, and took me here to Fort Myers to get me away from cocaine. I managed a bar in downtown, managed to stay away from drugs for a certain period of time, but eventually I found what I was looking for and proceeded to smoke up everything again. It was then I got my dream job. In the midst of all this, I was hired as an on-air radio broadcaster. It was then first I was part-time, then overnights, which is midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning, then middays, which is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I survived 7 different program directors, which are bosses in the radio world, and 2 format changes. I went from classic rock to new rock. I was using all the time. I was wondering how I could keep this job, but then again, everybody in radio seemed to not do what I did, but they partied. Eventually, I was offered a job back in Boston to work for the 800-pound gorilla, Westwood One Broadcasting. They asked me to come to work for them. Unbelievable. They were the largest broadcasting company in the world. I was doing news, weather, traffic, and sports for 7 different radio stations in Boston, but I was smoking crack, and it got in the way. So I started slipping at work. I was eventually fired. Then I moved back here, and I worked actually doing traffic reports and part-times for 96 K-Rock. Before I went back to work part-time radio, I was doing traffic reports, and I really didn't have a place to live. I lived in the studio, kind of. I didn't think anybody knew, but everybody knew, because everybody always knows. And I would be getting high there, and then before anybody came in, I would try to sleep a little bit, but I was out of control. And I tried to lay down before I went on the air, but that's what happens next. But as Pastor Arlene would say, but wait, there's more. And along comes my higher power, the Lee County Sheriff's Department. I'm arrested for my first felony, which began a life of street life and arrest. 5 felonies and countless misdemeanors. I was at my lowest point so far. Notice I said so far. I remember my sister being glad I was in jail. She said, I had a roof over my head, they are feeding me. And she also said she would go to any lengths to avoid me. My last arrest was August of 2008. I was asked in pretrial if I would accept help if I was offered help, and I said yes. I was offered and accepted into felony drug court. I was sworn in October of 2008 and graduated in 2009. Judge Hayes, thank you. I'm not going to point out a lot of people, but this woman is a godsend and has been my strongest supporter, or one of my strongest supporters, since that time, then, and I thank you, and Ann as well. I asked a man to be my sponsor, that guy right there. I joined a Cocaine Anonymous home group, and I was court-ordered to a men's Christian sober house. At this time, I started attending Cocaine Anonymous, like I said, and what was then Celebrate Recovery at the main campus of this church, which I affectionately call the Mothership. I walked in there were over 300 people, maybe 400 people, just like me, praising God. And one of the first times I was there, I went up to the altar call. I thought I was flying under the radar. I must have weighed all of 150 pounds. My teeth were falling out or discolored. I knelt down to pray. I felt a hand on my shoulder, then one on my other shoulder. And as I was turned around, I was surrounded by men praying for me, led by that man right there, Bill Robbins, who is my friend to this day. I love this church. I love this church. This church is my home. I took a multi-week course, which was then I had to do, and then was accepted as a member of this church in January of 2009. I immediately got involved. I stayed clean for 2 years and 11 months. I showed up at meetings, hurried through my step work, not really doing it, and took a whole bunch of commitments so people would look at me and see how busy I am. Look what I'm doing. I relapsed. I came up and got a white key tag and started over. Got a new sponsor, staying clean for 4.5 years. However, during this time, I was in a toxic relationship. You see, I was seeking a relationship with her versus seeking a relationship with Jesus. I know that unless I am seeking a relationship with Jesus, I'm no good to anyone else. Relapsed again with my then girlfriend, lied about it to everyone around me, resented people in recovery. I resented people here at church. I was argumentative. I was angry with everyone. And I was not working a program. I actually picked up a 5-year medallion lying about my sobriety, eventually having to give that medallion back. Ironically, I thought my relationship with that woman was a gift from God. Good Lord. I couldn't see the reality that this wasn't healthy and wasn't from the very beginning. From that point onto about a year ago, or just over a year ago right now, I was a train wreck, using, not using. All along I was trying to fill my God hole with that girl who by this time had left, but I couldn't accept the fact that she left and would constantly try to get her back. Also, I began working for a guy that you saw up on the screen there, if you know who it is. I met him at a meeting. His name was Chris Prophet. I sold advertising for him. We were attached at the hip for years, working together, going to noon meetings at AWOL, taking meetings into TLC. This is during a 4-year of real sobriety. Chris got hired by a company called Williamson Brothers Marine Construction at that time, and he got me hired too. It was a small, tiny office, which is now a multi-million-dollar company. Chris and I headed up the customer service department. Chris was using and got let go by the owner. I didn't see him for a while, but that was when I started using again. One day I actually got up from my desk from these great brothers that had put faith in me. This is that selfishness and self-centeredness again. I got up, it was a Friday afternoon. I stood up from my desk and I walked out and never came back. The job was getting in the way of me getting high. From that point, I used every day, all day, hardly ever slept. I got way behind on my bills. My roommate of 15 years, Steve over there, couldn't take it anymore. He left. At this time, my friend Chris had found the miracle drug. He found that smoking crystal meth was going to keep him alive, was going to keep him working harder, was going to keep him more alert. Chris was a big, loud, he's that big tattooed guy you saw in a picture up there. He always called me his little buddy and said we would get through anything together. See, Chris came to live with me in this house that I had turned into a trap and tried to save me all the way he couldn't save himself. I took Chris to the hospital on a Friday. He was dead 3 weeks later. He never came out. Cocaine Anonymous has a reading, and part of that reading says, perhaps we saw a cocaine friend die of respiratory arrest and still kept on using. My best friend was dead, and all I could think of was getting more dope. I drove prostitutes and drug dealers every day to stay high. My house became a war zone. What used to be a spotless, beautiful home was now a shack. I got up and walked out, never looked back, walked away from it. Something bad was going to happen, and I didn't want to be there when it did. I lived in my car for a short period of time, or at Tom's house. I wanted out. I couldn't go on living this way, and I couldn't stop. My friend Jay says, when the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the pain of change, only then will I change. And the scripture says, Lamentations 3:40, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. I had done enough testing. I'm ready to come back home. I called Detox. They asked me to call back the next day. I didn't know if there would be a next day at that time. I found a place called St. Matthew's House in Naples, and they would take me dirty. They were the only place that would take me dirty. So I borrowed $10 from Tom, and which didn't get me to Naples, but it got me halfway there. So I called them when I was running out of gas, and they sent a car up and met me and put gas in my car, and I made it down there. So from that point on, I followed some footsteps. One of my best friends in the whole world is this man sitting right over here. He's the bass player in this band. His name is Mike. Known Mike for over 20 years. We used together, ran on the streets. Mike got clean the first time the same year I did in 2008. Mike had relapsed, but was now a couple of years sober and doing very well. So I followed his footprints. As I look back, they were actually God's footprints. You see, God was carrying Mike. Mike went to detox, then a 28-day program, and then a sober house. So I went to detox, or to the St. Matthew's House, to a 28-day program, and to these young ladies over here, which is where I still reside. That is Carrie Ann and Eileen. They own Surrender House. So I'm an addict, and I can't manage my own life, and no human power can relieve me, but God can and will if I seek him. I haven't looked back since. I stay at this men's sober house not because I have to. See, I wasn't court-ordered this time. I wasn't under anybody's thumb. I wanted this more so badly I could taste it. I live at this house because I was a liar and a deceiver, and now I want to be accountable. These ladies can hold me accountable. This church can hold me accountable. Cocaine Anonymous holds me accountable. So, here, talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Okay, all right. So, yeah, I'll stop it. Okay. I have learned that once I admitted that I had a problem, a spiritual solution became the only answer. Then I had to work and get out of the way. Do the work and get out of the way. I finally realized that drugs were never my problem. I had wrongly thought they were my solution. Then finally opened myself up to God. Step one is the one I have to work every day. So when I wake up, I do this. As soon as I open my eyes, I say, "Good morning, God. I'm John. I'm an addict. I'm powerless over crack cocaine and immoral behavior, and it makes my life unmanageable." Then I roll over to my knees and I say a third step prayer, which is how I offer myself to God to be used by Him daily. I need His power daily. See, I smoke crack and broke the law every day. I'm doing this every day, no matter what. I don't care. It doesn't matter if I have to get up an hour early because I got to drive somebody someplace. This has got to come first, or I will die. And Narcotics Anonymous has this saying: jails, institutions, or death. Well, I've been to jail. I've been institutionalized, and I'm upright and breathing. But if any of you are like me, how many of us died emotionally and spiritually when we were out there? Whew. Okay. So I put my life in Jesus' hands. I die to self, which Chris Mahatsky taught me. I don't know what. I don't know. That must be a misprint. Okay, so, I don't know what God's will is for me, but 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 5, chapter 5, verses 16 through 18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. This is God's perfect will for me." In the past, I realized I was pretty insane. Real insanity is sitting in a 12-step meeting and not actually working the 12 steps. Sanity is madness put to good use. Today, I work my steps to be sane. In my fourth and fifth step, I realized fear was number one response, which triggered my character defects, which were control, selfishness, and the list goes on. This time, I finally held back nothing from my sponsor when sharing my fifth step. Thank you, Jim. Bill Robbins told me years ago, as he used to say to the group on Friday nights, "Those that don't do the steps don't do well, and those that don't do a fourth and fifth step will use again." I make a list of people I have harmed and became willing to make amends to them, direct amends to those people. I learned that amends is not saying I'm sorry. How many times have I said I'm sorry? It's learning how to make things right. Those are steps 8 and 9. And today I do this as the best I can as possible. Financial amends are still ongoing. So at this point, I'd like to say publicly to everyone sitting in this room that if I've harmed you in any way and don't remember harming you, let me know how I can make that right. In step 10, the flow of Jesus is so strong, it's easy to admit when I'm wrong and be aware of it. The promises of the 10th step guarantee me the problem has been removed as long as I keep in fit spiritual condition. Zach. In step 11, seeking Him, I can never be satisfied. This is cool. Because I read this. I didn't make any of this up, by the way. I can never be satisfied where I am in my relationship with Jesus. My hunger and thirst has to continue daily. I make sure I pray every day. I read. I go to a meeting, call men in recovery, and pray at the end of the day. Bill Wilson, one of the co-founders of AA, says, if an addict fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work at this, he would surely use again. And if he uses, he would surely die. And for me, that death is spiritual and emotional, like I said. Thy will, not mine, be done. 1 Timothy says, I thank Him who has given me strength, Jesus, because He judged me faithful. Today I carry the message by showing up, by my willingness to keep working the steps. In fact, my sponsor and myself Once we finished the steps, we started them over again using a book called The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. I pray throughout the day. I be of service to God and my fellows. If you come around, you'll see me. I'll be there. I'm a child of God and a person of worth. I'm a soldier of recovery. I am so dedicated to this, it's just not funny. All the glory to Christ who strengthens me. Jeremiah, this is my mantra verse. Jeremiah 29:11. It says that I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope for a future. I know today that God's plans are better than my plans. That's why I surrender to Him. I guess I'm running over. No? Okay. So Bob Wilson's partner, Dr. Bob Smith, who's another co-founder, wrote this back in 1935, and I tried to find it to be true today. I love it so much, I will close and share it with you. It is a most wonderful blessing to be relieved of the terrible curse with which I was afflicted. My health is good. I've regained my self-respect and the respect of my friends. My home life is ideal, and my business is as good as can be expected in these troublous times. I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others, to who want it and who need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, it's a pleasure. 2, because in doing so, I'm paying the debt to the man who took the time to pass it on me. 3, because it's a sense of duty. 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little bit more insurance against a possible slip. He also goes on to say, if you're strong enough to beat this game on your own, that's your own affair. That's up to you. But if you really and truly want to quit for good and sincerely feel you want some help, we know we have an answer for you. It never fails. If you go about it with half the effort you did when you were getting high or drunk or gambling or sex or codependency or whatever it is, your Heavenly Father will never let you down. Thank you for letting me share.